northern wilds of the Masai Mara, where predators are born into violence and tested by survival, a coalition of lions emerged that would change everything. They were known as the Nkoyonai boys, but they were not born under that name. Their story began within the Nkoyonai pride of Olare Motorogi Conservancy, under the protection and dominance of two great males, Lol Parpit and Ol Barnoti. These lions had forged a legacy in the region, and their bloodline would birth something even more formidable. Among the first was Lenko, born in June 2017. From an early age, he displayed a commanding presence. Beside him were Jiko and Ngogu, brothers in blood and fate, both born in November 2017. Each would carry scars early, with both eventually losing an eye. Then came Moana and Saningo, the latter born with a missing tail. These two arrived in December 2017. Finally, Doda, the youngest, born in March 2018, completed the group. Some whisper that Lenko might have been sired by the legendary Romeos II, one of the most iconic males in Mara history. If true, that would only deepen the mythos around the coalition's rise. Though they were born into strength, their path to power was far from guaranteed. The Mara is not kind to the young. It is a crucible where only the fiercest survive. In the early days, they remained under the shadow of their fathers, learning the laws of dominance, territory, and death. As subadults, they were playful, untested, and unaware of the blood they would one day spill. They would not stay together at first. The Mara had other plans. In a land carved by violence, bonds are tested not by loyalty but by survival. It was only later, when exile forced them to roam, that they truly became one. Not just brothers, but a coalition. One forged in fire, ambition, and instinct. The land did not yet know their names, but soon it would, because these were not ordinary males, and theirs would not be an ordinary path. The genesis of the Nkoyonai boys marked the beginning of a new chapter in Mara history, one written in blood. After leaving the safety of their birth pride, the young Nkoyonai males entered a phase every lion coalition must face, the nomadic era. It is the most dangerous period in a male lion's life, a time of wandering, uncertainty, and survival without territory or protection. They moved like shadows across the northern regions of the Mara. Still untested, they avoided open conflict, preferring stealth and patience over direct confrontation. They were not yet kings, they were exiles, drifters on the edges of dominance. But the Mara was watching. As they roamed, they came dangerously close to territories ruled by Olorai and Olekiti, two dominant males whose strength was unquestioned at the time. Tension filled the air. The Nkoyonai males were bold, often venturing near prides already under the control of these older lions. In a land where trespassing is often met with death, they did more than approach. They mated with females belonging to their rivals. If you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like the video and share in the comments what moment struck you the most. Your support helps more wildlife lovers discover this content. These were not acts of love, but of defiance. Each stolen mating was a challenge, a whisper of the power they would one day wield. At times, skirmishes broke out, but nothing yet exploded into full war. The Nkoyonai boys, still young and fragmented, would often appear in small groups, 2, 3, maybe 4 at a time, rarely all 6 together. To the seasoned warriors of the Mara, they were ghosts, promising perhaps, but not yet a threat. And yet something was shifting. Observers began to note their presence with increasing frequency. Each time they appeared, they looked stronger, more unified. Their bodies grew leaner, their eyes colder. They watched, they waited. Their movements were precise, their goals unknown. But it was clear, they were studying the land they would one day take. In this period of uncertainty, their identity as a coalition began to solidify. They were no longer just blood brothers. They were becoming predators of ambition, bound by a common hunger, not just for food, but for dominance. The Mara had seen many coalitions before. Some rose, some fell. Most passed through this nomadic stage and faded into memory. But the Nkoyonai boys were different. In the stillness of the plains, something dangerous was awakening. Their exile was temporary. Their silence was not weakness, it was strategy. Soon they would no longer be wanderers. Soon the Mara would remember their names. The moment of silence ended with the first conquest. After years of wandering, the Nkoyonai boys no longer moved as ghosts. They emerged as a united force, and with unity came ambition. Their eyes turned toward the Croton Island males, Olerai, and Olikiti, once untouchable figures of dominance in the region. But nothing in the Mara lasts forever. Every reign ends, and the Nkoyonai had come to end theirs. It began with pressure. The young coalition began encroaching deeper into Croton Island territory, no longer content with the fringes. They roamed, boldly, confidently, their numbers finally coordinated. The 6 brothers were seen together side by side, their manes thickening, their roars growing in power. Their confidence was unshakable. The challenge was clear. Olerai and Olikiti, though experienced, could not stand against the full force of 6 young males driven by hunger, instinct, and blood-bound loyalty. A confrontation erupted. Details of the battles remain fragmented. Snarls in the night, blood in the grass, but the result was unmistakable. The Croton males were defeated, driven out, their legacy shattered. In their place, the Nkoyonai boys took everything. Their reign began with the takeover of the offbeat pride, a large and well-established pride that had thrived under previous rule. With its lionesses came mating rights, cubs, and the continuation of bloodlines. The Nkoyonai were no longer observers of history. They had become its authors, but they didn't stop. Their hunger for expansion became a campaign of conquest. Soon after, they took control of the Cheli pride. The legendary Lion Marani, the last surviving member of the famous Musketeers, and his son from the Rekero breakaway were driven out. Forced to retreat, they abandoned the land they once ruled. The Nkoyonai, still young, had already overthrown some of the most respected bloodlines in the Mara. With 2 major prides under their control, the coalition expanded their territory far beyond what most coalitions achieve in a lifetime. Their roars echoed through the northern plains. The grasslands they once wandered as nomads were now their kingdom. Patrols were frequent, intruders were chased without hesitation. Hyenas kept their distance. Subadult males fled at the mere scent of their presence. It was a golden age forged through aggression. Cubs were born. Generations began to rise under the names of Lenko, Saningo, Jiko, Ngogu, Mwana, and Doda. They were no longer names in the wind. They were the roaring pulse of the Mara North, and in every corner of the Conservancy, one thing became clear. The Nkoyonai had arrived, not as kings by birth, but as kings by conquest. Their rise was complete. But the Mara is not a place for peace. It gives power only to test how far it can be pushed and how violently it will be taken away. With their dominance established, the Nkoyonai boys entered a phase of unchallenged rule. They controlled a vast expanse of territory across Mara North Conservancy. The once fragmented brothers had become an empire. The offbeat and Cheli prides flourished under their reign. Mating rights gave rise to new generations of cubs, sons, and daughters of a brutal lineage. Lenko, now recognized as the coalition's leader, enforced his presence with intensity. Saningo, despite his missing tail, became a relentless enforcer. Jiko and Ngogu, battle-worn and one-eyed, patrolled with equal menace. Mwana and Doda completed the unit, a brotherhood rooted in survival, strengthened by bloodshed. Every predator in the region recognized the shift in power. Hyenas avoided their trails. Rival males kept to the edges, wary of provoking the wrath of 6 unified lions. Even the herds of wildebeest and zebra moved with caution. The scent of Nkoyonai marked dominance, and that scent was everywhere. This was the height of their glory. They ruled not just through strength but through fear. Stories began to circulate of males chased for kilometers, of lionesses taken from distant prides, of roars that silenced the night. And within the prides, they now commanded submission was absolute. Lionesses followed, cubs were protected. Any threat, be it leopard, cheetah, or rival lion, was dealt with immediately. But while unity defined their rise, Cracks had already begun to form beneath the surface. Coalitions, no matter how powerful, are still made of individuals. And with every successful hunt, every lioness claimed, and every boundary defended, the question began to emerge: who among them deserved more? Still, to the outside world, they were impenetrable. Their patrols extended further than any coalition in recent memory. They moved like soldiers, their paths methodical and relentless, from the Olara plains to the Cheli woodlands, from the riverbanks. Of offbeat to the farthest corners of their acquired domain, the Nkoyonai ruled with a presence that left no doubt. They were the apex. But the Mara never forgets. Power in the savanna is a temporary flame, bright, dangerous, but always vulnerable to wind and time. For now, they were untouchable. Yet even at the peak of their strength, the seeds of their fall had already been planted, quiet, buried beneath the golden grass. Power does not remain unchallenged, not even among brothers. Though the Nkoyonai coalition appeared invincible to outsiders, inside, tensions were building. The same blood that had forged their unity now began to stir rivalry. Success had fed them, but success also awakened something else: the hunger for more lionesses, more dominance, more control. Doda, once the youngest member of the group, began to disappear from sightings. He was no longer seen on patrols, no longer with the others during hunts. No one saw him defend territory or claim mating rights. He had simply vanished into the vastness of the Mara. Whispers followed. Some said he had been killed by other lions. Others claimed he had been pushed out by his own brothers. No one knew the truth, but his absence was not coincidence. It was a signal. The coalition, once 6, had become 5. The bond that once held them so tightly had begun to loosen. Lenko, always the dominant figure, started clashing with Saningo. The reasons were unclear, perhaps a lioness, perhaps territory, or simply dominance itself. The two fought, not for survival, but for status. Saningo, despite his missing tail, did not submit easily. The confrontation was brief but brutal. Blood was drawn. No one died that day, but the meaning was clear. Even among allies, the instinct to rule can become a threat. And yet, the coalition endured. For now, their unity, though bruised, held, but those close to the land began to see it, a subtle shift in behavior, less tolerance, more distance between members, longer periods apart. The scars of ambition had begun to show. The Nkoyonai boys had reached the peak of power, but at the summit the wind is strongest, and even the most solid alliances begin to shake when the sky darkens above them. The first true fracture came in blood. It was October 2022 when the Nkoyonai boys revealed the darkest side of their power. Until then, they had fought rivals, pushed out dominance and eliminated threats. But now they turned inward. Logol was not a stranger. He was their half-brother, born of the same lineage, shaped by the same lands. He had not challenged them. He had merely crossed their path. But for the Nkoyonai, mercy had no place. There were no second chances in their kingdom. 3 members of the coalition ambushed Logol without warning. The attack was savage and deliberate. No territory was at stake, no lioness, only a message. Teeth sank into flesh. His cries were drowned beneath the snarls of those who once shared his blood. When it ended, Logol lay broken and still. His body was left behind as a warning. The Nkoyonai had crossed a threshold from which there would be no return. It wasn't just a death. It was a ritual of dominance, a line drawn in blood. The Mara does not forget such acts, and neither do those who witness them. From that moment, the Nkoyonai were no longer seen as just rulers. They were executioners. Their reputation hardened into something far more dangerous than strength. They became fear incarnate. Something in them had shifted. The kill had been personal, unnecessary, and absolute. It was not about survival anymore. It was about control. They had silenced a brother, and in doing so they had marked the beginning of their own unraveling, because every tragedy begins not with weakness, but with unchecked power. And for the Nkoyonai, power had become an appetite, with no end. In July 2023, the Nkoyonai crossed another line, one that would echo across the Mara. Jesse was no ordinary lion. He was a nomadic king, a survivor of battles and a symbol of strength in exile. Though he held no territory, his name carried weight. Many younger lions avoided him. His presence alone commanded respect, but respect meant nothing to the Nkoyonai. When Jesse crossed paths with the coalition, there was no warning. He was not seeking conflict, yet the Nkoyonai saw no nuance, only opportunity. Several members launched a coordinated attack, overwhelming him with brutal precision. The fight was merciless. Jesse fought back, as he always had, but age was against him. His body, though strong, could no longer match the fury of youth. He was left injured and broken. Days later, he succumbed to his wounds alone. With Jesse's death, the Nkoyonai claimed more than a victory. They ended a legacy. The fall of such a lion was not just a loss, it was a statement. They had killed a king. Across the region, silence followed. Predators who once watched Jesse with wary eyes now saw his corpse as proof. No name, no history, no legend was safe. The Nkoyonai had stripped the Mara of one of its final great symbols of resilience. Their reputation, already feared, became mythic. They were not just enforcers, they were erasers of legacy. Their rule had passed beyond dominance and into something older, something primal. They were no longer part of the Mara's balance. They were its rupture, and as Jesse's bones bleached under the sun, the savanna seemed to acknowledge it. A new age had taken hold, an age ruled not by strength alone, but by violent certainty. The Nkoyonai were writing history with blood. In December 2023, fate struck not from outside, but from within. Jicho, one of the most recognizable lions of the Nkoyonai, was found alone. He wandered aimlessly, his face bloodied, his one remaining eye destroyed. The other had been lost long ago. Now, he was completely blind. There were no witnesses to what had happened. Some believe he fought with another coalition. Others whispered it was a brother who turned on him. The truth remained hidden beneath the silence of the Mara. What was clear was that Jicho could no longer survive. He staggered across the plains, disoriented and vulnerable. A lion without sight is not just weakened, he is doomed. He could not hunt, he could not defend himself, and worse, he could not find his brothers. For days he lingered in that limbo between life and death. Rangers found him emaciated and collapsing, near water. After evaluating his condition, the decision was made. There was no hope. The veterinarians ended his suffering. Jicho was gone. The coalition, once 6, was now 4. The loss shook the Nkoyonai, not only because of Jicho's absence, but because of what it represented. A lion so integral to their rise had fallen not in battle, but in confusion and isolation. It was not the death of a warrior, it was the unraveling of a thread in their unity. Nkongu, too, bore wounds from recent clashes. Deep gashes marked his body, and his movements had slowed. He stayed with the coalition, but the strength once shared equally among the brothers now showed uneven cracks. And with Jicho's death, the Nkoyonai were forced to retreat slightly. They relinquished control of the offbeat pride. Their territory shrank, their grip loosened. The stroke of fate had landed, and it had taken more than blood. It had taken certainty. With Jicho gone and Nkongu weakened, a shift occurred within the Nkoyonai coalition. The once balanced power dynamic fractured, and from within the shadowed core, Lenko rose fully as the unquestioned leader. He had always been dominant, strong, calculated, relentless, but now he was more than that. He was the face of the coalition's brutality. The others, Mwana, Saningo, and the wounded Nkongu, continued to follow, but it was Lenko who defined their next chapter. The coalition no longer stretched itself thin. With their reduced numbers and the loss of the offbeat pride, they focused their strength where they could still dominate. Cheli and Syrian became their strongholds. These territories, rich and familiar, were maintained through constant patrol and sheer intimidation. Every roar from Lenko was a declaration. The kings were still here, but they were not alone in the wild. The Acacia Boys, a younger coalition, had dared to settle in lands once ruled by the Nkoyonai. They even laid claim to the offbeat pride. That was a line Lenko would not allow to remain uncrossed. In a swift, violent confrontation, the Nkoyonai drove the Acacia boys from the area. One was left injured, limping into the grasslands, barely alive. It was a warning as much as it was a victory. Other challengers emerged too, like the Sankai boys, who wandered dangerously close to the edge of Nkoyonai territory. Even their offspring, the subadults of the Lemek Pride, were pursued. One was injured in the attack. No one was exempt. Rival bloodlines were not tolerated, not even the youngest. The coalition pressed close to new boundaries, reaching the swamplands ruled by the powerful Topi boys. But for once there was no battle. The moment passed without violence. Then in March 2025, something unexpected happened. Nkongu was seen eating alongside one of the Acacia boys. There was no aggression, no fight, no chase. Just two lions sharing a carcass, an almost impossible image in the violent history of the Nkoyonai. For a moment, it seemed even the fiercest might feel the weight of exhaustion, of age, of too many battles fought. But the respite was brief. Months later, Lenko was seen dragging the lifeless body of a lion. Some say it was one of the Oloisukut, males. Others believe it was a member of the Sankai coalition, no identity confirmed, no survivors left to speak. Lenko had spoken again. Time did not soften them. If anything, the losses had sharpened their edge. The Nkoyonai were fewer now, but the weight they carried was heavier, an accumulation of victories, betrayals, blood, and ghosts. The Mara no longer saw them as a coalition. It saw them as a force. Lenko had fully become a creature of dominance. No longer just the leader, he was the executioner of his pride's law. The territory had narrowed, but the terror had intensified. Few dared cross their borders, and fewer still returned when they did. The Acacia boys remained a threat, regrouping in the distance. The Sankai boys hovered, probing for weakness. The Topi coalition held their ground, but none dared provoke a war. Not yet. Then came the moment that confirmed everything the Mara had learned to fear. Lenko was spotted dragging the body of a dead lion. The corpse was limp, bloodied, torn, its face mangled beyond recognition. It wasn't just a kill. It was their display. Witnesses say he didn't rush. He walked slowly, deliberately, as if to ensure every scent, every trace, every mark of death remained for others to find. No coalition had ever ruled so violently or so long without collapse. And yet the Nkoyonai remained. There were no cubs at their feet, no new members, no legacy being raised in the safety of the prides. Only blood, memory, and dominance. Their reign had become something ancient, mythic, not in stories of nobility or honor, but in the raw memory of fear. They were no longer just lions. They were punishment, and yet the Mara moves in cycles. The Nkoyonai are still feared, still dangerous, still dominant, but time is the only enemy that never misses. Lenko, Saningo, Mwana, Nkongu, they are aging. Scars grow deeper. Steps grow slower. And somewhere in the distance, new coalitions are rising, watching, waiting. The Nkoyonai wrote their rule in violence. They carved their names into the bones of rivals. They destroyed bloodlines, they murdered their own. They broke the rules of brotherhood, of mercy, of natural order. And for now, they still rule. But all legends bleed, and even the most brutal. Kings must one day fall. Until then, the Mara waits. Because when the Nkoyonai walk, the grass does not whisper. It holds its breath,